It is a privilege and an honor to be here again. I am W. Shauna Gibbs, a member of the Columbus Board of Education, and proud to serve as one of the co-chairs of the Facilities Master Plan Ad Hoc Committee, along with my colleague, Mr. Dominic Peretti. We're going to officially call this meeting to order at 6 o'clock p.m. Tonight we have a very full agenda, so we want to make sure we have time to go over the agenda for the evening, the roles and the expectations, bring up the presenters, and have time for sufficient dialogue and critical information to be given to you so we can do our work. But I would be remiss if I did not first introduce to you the gentleman who has the privilege of being here every day, who is the instructional leader of this building, Dr. Levels, who is principal of Ames. Dr. Levels, he's going to give us an official welcome to the building.
Good evening. Thank you, co-chair, board member, Mrs. Gibbs, for this opportunity. I'd like to welcome you all to Arts Impact Middle School, which is the best middle school in the district. One of the things that I would like to first and foremost say that the facilities make the kids feel even better about coming to school every day, coming and learning, having fun, seeing their peers. One of the great things about our building is our kids, and if you walk around, get an opportunity to see all the artwork that's displayed around our building is done by our students. And our students take pride in the artwork and the things that they create within our building. So as we, as a district, continue to move forward in regards to making sure every kid, every child has the same opportunities, understand that with that opportunity increases those student opportunities to learn even greater. Down the hallway on our left, we have our facilities as far as the restrooms. Please feel free. There's water fountains on the outside, as well as down the hallway, we have a lounge if anyone needs any sodas. But like to actually, like I said, welcome you all to this building. And if there's any questions, I'll be floating around the building as well. Please feel free. And once again, welcome.
I'd also like to take a time to acknowledge our other school board members that are here. I believe Eric Brown, I saw you walk in. Would you please stand? School Board Member Brown. And I know that other school board members would join us throughout the evening. So without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to my colleague, Mr. Peretti, who is going to go over the material that you have and the agenda for the evening.
No, you're fine. I keep it. Thank you very much. My name is Dominic Peretti, and I just want to first just really start out with saying thank you very much again for making time. I know everyone's very, very busy, and I also want to thank you for being patient. This is a very, very big process with a lot of data, with a lot of tangible data, with a lot of intangible data, and you know, and we have a time frame, and it's a very condensed time frame. So I first want to just thank everyone for being very patient with us as we're getting out this information so that we're making sure that we get the best information out to all the members so we can make the right decisions when it comes down the line. Real quick, when we go look over the agenda, a couple of things. We're going to kind of quickly go over sort of the process update and review, and then kind of really quick get into some of the small group work sessions. You're also going to find a background report, which it includes a lot of data in there. And I really want to stress this about the background report. The background report, folks, is a living document. And it's something that we're going to continue to be working on and evolving because, like I said, this data, it really needs to be mined. And sometimes you need to have people on the ground level looking at these buildings so we can have an accurate description of what's really going on. So this document is going to be changing. It's going to be getting more information, and we're going to briefly be going over that as well. Folks, tonight is really, really important. Tonight is talking about, we're going to be getting together in small groups tonight and talking about a couple of different sort of theme areas: school size, grade configuration, exceptional student service, program space expectations, student support spaces, athletics, phys ed, those sort of general areas, because what we need to do is we need to be starting to ask questions to ourselves. What do we expect? What do we want out of our buildings that are providing education to our children. What do we want to see in these sort of bucket areas? What does that mean to us? And it's going to mean different things in different parts of the city. So that's why we need to really get down to some real basic questions about what we want as a community. And so that when we get these questions finalized and we get out to the community, we'll be able to talk to them and really get those specific things that each neighborhood has that may be different. Because one grade configuration is not going to be the answer all to another area. And as I've been learning, you can find as much evidence to support one thing as you can another, and it really just depends on what the neighborhood needs are, what the community needs are, and that's what we really need to be able to find out. So we're going to be able to boil down these basic questions so we can get out and talk to these folks, our community, and bring that information back in so that when we're looking at our facilities, we can say, look, these are some of the benchmarks and baselines this community is saying they're talking about when it comes to their schools. So that's sort of just basically what we're going to be kind of getting into. It's a process, folks. These things, we'll get a cadence. We're really going to get some momentum. We're going to have a lot of fun doing this. And I just want to thank everyone for being patient. I'm going to really quickly just thank our staff, our superintendent, and all the folks that really work hard, every day making this happen for us. And I really want to thank all the community once again for making time. And Tracy, our consultant that's been helping out with us, he's going to be taking up the next section, sort of discussing how this is going to look. And again, thanks a lot. Oh, yeah. And make sure you all sign in if you didn't, so we know who came.
Okay, hi everybody. We got a lot of work to do tonight, and I want to tell you kind of where we've been in the last 3.5 weeks since we've seen you, just really quickly. We had a 2-day discussion on educational. Can you guys hear me okay in the back? Is this okay? We had a 2-day discussion on where the district wants to be on all kinds of different areas. We sat down with everybody from curriculum to health services to custodial to administration to just hour after hour of asking people where they want to be. How do you make Columbus City Schools the best urban district in the country? Now, I'm going to tell you, I do this a lot, and I do it a lot with a lot of districts. And when I go into these meetings, this is what I typically get. I get, we do this really well, and we're going to keep doing this, and they pat themselves on the back. Not this district. They sat down, they said, this is where we're at, but this is where we're going to be. And they went step by step to show me what their dream is, what their vision is, to make sure that every service, not just the kids sitting in the English room, not the kids just sitting in the science room, but every child gets the best service across the board. And I will tell you that Dr. Good walked out of there just super excited, as did I. We walked out together saying, this is really just inspiring. And so I think you share that with me. I was thoroughly impressed. So that's the baseline of tonight's discussion. We're not really, again, as I stated in the first meeting, we're not going to dig deep into the data yet. We've given you a background document that I'm going to kind of give you an overview, but it's for you to look at for the next couple of weeks, for you to start digging into, for you to start circling numbers and to see what does that mean to you and your communities, what does that mean to the district as a whole. That's what the purpose of this document is. And we're going to add to it in the next couple of weeks, and I'll share some things that we'd like to add in there for you. But what we've provided for you tonight are a couple things. The first thing is, and this is kind of hard to see, but I'll put this up. You provided questions for us and comments in the first one. Remember when you left kind of on your name tags for that? I think we caught everything we needed to catch as far as not missing any questions or comments. The back pages have what we might have deemed more as comments and maybe some directional things for us, which we really appreciated. And then we did our best to answer the questions for everybody to see. Now, you probably have follow-up to these, and that's fine. One of the reasons you have table tents once again is that at the end of the night when you have questions, hand in your table tent, put the question on there. That's going to be our process. If you got some questions you weren't able to ask, but you're going to have plenty of time to ask questions tonight. So we've got that for you. The next part is, and I want to take you into the background report really quick, and I'm going to pull it up on the screen. No, the background, we'll do the process update at the end. Is that okay? I want to get them because this is just going to be set aside on this. And because I want to jump into these questions with this, and I just want to show you what's in it, and we'll set it aside, and we're going to jump right into our small groups, and I'll explain that. So the background report. What you have in here are just a couple highlight things. The first page is going to be your enrollment projection, which Ms. Healy covered at the last meeting. The next 2 pages are what we call pathways. We might refer to them as feeder schools, as a school feeds up into the next grade level. What we want to show here is that there are geographic pathways and there's programmatic pathways in the district. And what you find is that there are some that are both, there are some that are only geographic, there are some that are only programmatic. But it shows you kind of where the district stands and how you kind of progress through the district. And there's a couple pages of this. And then there's a list of just 100% feeder schools in there, or 100% alternative schools that don't technically have a programmatic feeder into them, technically, and they don't necessarily have a geographic kind of pathway into them. And so they stand as an all-city lottery. And so they stand independent of each other. Again, just for your visual, to kind of give you an idea of how schools are grouped programmatically and geographically. The next page I do not expect you to read up here or even on your page. It is online, but I'm going to take you to the next page because I want to I'll just take you to the high schools. These sheets are really important and will probably grab your attention more than most. We call this a live-attend analysis. It simply reads like, everybody remember the old atlas that your dad used to carry underneath the seat of the car that in the back had a mileage chart? It reads exactly the same way. So when you read down on the chart, it tells you where students live and how many students live in an attendance area. And as you go across, you can see in the end column how many kids live in an attendance area. Then you can see by school who is coming into the building and who is transferring out, or not who, but where they're going. And so if you look across, for instance, and just take the bottom one because it's easy to read the line, like Yorktown, no, I went to the high schools, didn't I? Let me go to the high school. At Whetstone High School, Northwest, I can see if I go across, there are 937 children, or if you go down, you go down and you see 916 kids attend the school, 497 live in that district and attend that school, and 419 students transfer out of that. And as you can go up the chart, you can see where they're transferring out to. Now, again, you're going to go right to your school and you're going to see, okay, how many kids really live in my boundary? How many kids attend out? Or how many kids come in? Now, the reason this is important is there's a couple of reasons. First of all, you're going to see higher transfer rates in Columbus than most districts because you have a pretty open policy on, especially within regions of open camp, or not open campus, but transfer rates across boundaries. And so higher transfer rates don't necessarily reflect a bad or a good thing. They're just a piece of data to use. For us, how we use them is that when we start to make facility decisions about school size or boundaries or anything like that, we really pay attention to what the number of students are and why they're moving. On here, you can't see why they're moving. There could be a number of reasons. It could be a special education program. The teacher takes their own son or daughter to school with them. There could be a lot of different reasons students transfer across. Again, this isn't a sheet for judgment. It is a sheet of data that says this is how many kids live in a boundary, how many kids come in, and how many kids go out. And it's going to be very useful for us when we start to develop options down the road. The next few pages are simply, this one indicates where special programs are, and then we start to kind of get in just to the planning areas. Some basic information of schools. What we will add into this is that as we continue to go down the road and explore capacity of facilities, so we'll start to look at capacity, we'll start to add in their cost for life cycle and deficiency cost per building, so you can start to see, where the condition of the building is. So we're going to start to add columns over the next couple of weeks and keep sending these to you so you can add to them. And it gives some really good baseline information of the schools that that are in your area. These are ones you want to pay close attention to and help us on this. If you see something that just doesn't seem right, that's what we need to know. Part of just being a kind of the watchdog of this document, because that's our goal, is to make this as accurate as possible. And then the last one is just some general facilities information, all lottery schools. And then there's just a lot of facilities in the district. Okay, so there's some baseline stuff like garages and maintenance houses and things like that. So you can kind of see the entire portfolio of the district. And that's it. Again, just a piece of information that's going to keep growing. We are going to, at the next ad hoc committee meeting, we're going to get in depth on this one. Okay, so this is the next couple of weeks. Really take the opportunity to kind of take a deep dive on your own in this. Really watch the documentation on that. I know that Live Attend chart is hard to see on here, but when you get on the computer, you can blow it up and you can see better those lines on the elementary. And so it's just impossible to fit something like that on 11 by 17. I could have made it on a big poster board, but you probably don't have anywhere to hang it. Okay. With that, let's get to the task at hand tonight. I'm going to escape out of this one. We have 5 areas that we feel that we'd like to discuss tonight. Yes.
We talked about a couple of things on here just to get some discussion going, and then you can move forward, because I don't want to move forward and then we move away from the subject area.
What?
I wanted to point out the attendance.
Well, let me decide, because I think it's important to talk about that, but on like the attendance, let me come and talk to you specifically about that. And I appreciate that. Our input tonight, the purpose of tonight is about the educational framework. Okay, okay.
I noticed that the attendance based on 2014, projecting out to 2024 and 2025 is flat, where the region is expected to grow exponentially even during that same period. So we anticipating that with all the same schools, we're not going to see any growth with the student population, because I'm a little curious about that as we do more projects around town from real estate development perspective. Is that what we're anticipating? We're not going to see any growth?
So first of all, there's a lot of other indicators than just kind of housing growth and that. You've got birth data, which basically plummeted our lower grades enrollment, as you can see, that's going to kind of move through our district. And even any growth of the birth probably hasn't occurred until 13 and 14 again, so we probably won't see any result of that for another 4 or 5 years. And so in a 10-year projection, you're likely not anticipated to catch that birth, which is a strong indicator. The metro area is growing and the population is growing, but we see that the population is also aging. And so there's going to be a balance of the two. Now, the nice part about a plan like this, again, is that it's staged, and so you adapt, you do the projections every year, and then you look at what the next phase will be so you can adapt in there. And the program's set up to be just that.
Well, one of the points that was really interesting is the pre-K program, is as we talk about this at the city level.
Yep.
What we're going to do is flat growth, and we already know that that's going to be an emphasis within the city of Columbus for pre-K programming.
And pre-K is one of our subject areas tonight, so we'll do a deeper dive into pre-K. Okay. I'm sorry.
I think that there's program areas that you have in this geographic pathways versus programmatic pathways. There's some things that I think we ought to be visualizing a little bit, that like Columbus Arthur ways and looking at feeder patterns potentially, whether they don't happen today, but certainly there's programs that are successful that we ought
One of the reasons that we show that pathway is, one of the reasons we do show that pathway is to show that, because as we start to develop options, one of the options development ways we do is to figure out, are there better programmatic pathways, or are there ways to enhance programs through better pathways? So that's why that's a critical piece of data in there. And so I agree that that's and that's probably that 30-day discussion after this, but that's a critical piece to why we show just that chart there. So, okay. And I'm glad to, and I'll talk more specifically about this, and I think that tonight what we're going to do is we're going to talk about 5 subject areas that as we go out to the communities, we want to We want to talk to them about really what their expectations are. And again, I guess I could come up with 1,000 questions to go out and ask your community, but you don't want me to do that. That's not my job. My job is to help kind of prepare us for that, but to take information from you about characteristics that we'd like to see. So we're going to talk about 5 subject areas, the first being grade configuration and school size. And what we're going to do is, when I get done kind of with this explanation, is we're going to do 2 sessions. They're each going to be 45-minute sessions, and we're going to ask that you go to 2 areas that you may be interested in. Now, you're going to get an opportunity to have input on all 5 areas, but in order to talk about 5 areas, we'd probably be here for about 4 hours tonight. So what we're going to ask you to do is go into 2 areas that you're most interested in right now to discuss. We've got subject area experts in each of those program areas we're going to talk about tonight, and they're going to kind of just start the discussion. And they've got a couple of sample questions that are only there to spark the conversation, to get the conversation to be a more organic discussion about where you want to be. I stay away, when I ask questions in community, I stay away from specifics that it'd be difficult to be an expert in. And that's why one of the first things we talk about is school size and grade configuration. You know, a lot of planners will go out there and they'll ask, how big do you want your school to be? And most people will go, well, I don't know. What is the best school size? And so tonight when we're talking about school size and grade configuration, what we keep in mind is first that there is really no right answer to that. Is that different grade configurations work for different communities. Different school sizes work for different communities. I've seen just as many 350 student station elementary schools be successful as I have 800 student station elementary schools. The difference is where they're put and what the characteristics of the community expect of their schools. Grade configuration being the same thing. And so if you're interested in talking in that group, and I'm going to help in that group, and we're going to be back in that corner, those 2 tables, the questions will be more around the characteristics of school size and grade configuration that you expect as a community. And then we'll try to formulate some questions around that. The second area that we're going to talk about is, I got to just pull out my cheat sheet, sorry. The second area we're going to talk about is exceptional student services. Now, this group over here, raise your hands, talented group over here and a lot of expertise, are going to talk about 4 subject areas. They're going to talk about special education, ESL, pre-kindergarten, and gifted education. Again, one of their first kind of mode of operation as they start is they want to kind of give you some background of where they are. But they really want to talk about what your expectation is for delivering special education services, ESL services, pre-K services, how we want to address that as a school district, and to see where it's going. They'll have some numbers for you, they'll have some background on it, and they've got some vision themselves. But trying to get around that idea of what truly do we want to ask the community when we're talking about these 4 areas. The next area is program space type, and that's going to be kind of in this front part of the room. The program space type is an important discussion when we're doing facility planning because school districts and school buildings are obviously made of different types of spaces. In the state of Ohio, if you're going to get co-funded, there are Ohio School Design Manual standards that you build to. There are spaces that get funded. There are spaces that don't get funded that we call, if you want to have them in, you call them locally funded initiatives, so they're LFIs. And so when you see, as you probably saw in the last bond where Columbus comes out and they've got things that they want to do that don't meet the OSFC standards but are important for Columbus. This is a really important discussion because this will talk about, do we want art rooms and music rooms in every elementary? Do we want a pre-K space in every elementary? Do we want CTE spaces in every middle school? This is a real critical discussion because when we go into planning, one of the first things that we look at is, okay, the community expectation is we want these types of spaces. And we start to look at facilities. We say, this school doesn't have it, this school doesn't have it, this school does. And then we have to start to get to those spaces to build some equity across the district. Does that make sense in that? And so there's going to be a real good discussion about elementary, middle, and high school spaces that you'd like to see in your buildings. And then we've got Alex will help us. Where's Alex in the room? Oh, Alex is in the back. Alex has been, and we got OSFC here too, which is awesome. Hi, Melanie, how are you? Who are the experts in knowing those spaces that may be able to help us know when it's an LFI or a co-funded space. And so a really good discussion there. Oh, I'm sorry, that team is right here. Raise your hand, sorry. So yeah, this team right here in these first two tables, they're going to be that team to help you. The next area is student support services. Student support services, I kind of call these people kind of the unsung heroes of the district. These are people who provide those services that support the curriculum and the academics every day that you sometimes you hope you never see, because you got the school nurse, you have you've got guidance, you've got social services, you've got all of these things that are necessary in today's world of public education. And we've got to decide how we're going to deliver those services across this district. Again, to accelerate to be the best urban public school district in the country, this is a critical component of this, because this services the needs of everybody. So this group right here in the back are going to be talking about that. That includes all those intervention services and how we want to deliver those across. We think a critical piece, and once again, in facilities planning, this is the for instance I always use. If we expect that there should be a nurse's room or a nurse's office in every elementary school, that should be if that's your expectation, we need to see if that expectation is shared by all. And then we go back in the facilities, we say, this school has it, this school has it, this school needs it. And it helps us plan better to provide some equity across the district in those types of spaces. The final one is athletics. And athletics will be this middle table, and we'll probably steal another table in the middle to come over. He's got his sign. There's a coach. He's holding up his play there. But athletics is really about trying to prioritize the kinds of how you want to improve athletic facilities across the district. And oftentimes, athletics balance is pretty low when it comes to funding because everybody wants to invest in the school building, and we get it. But we also believe the whole student is important. And so athletics, gymnasiums, fields, tracks, all those things that go into athletics and how we prioritize. And so again, lead the conversation there if you're interested in athletics. So with that, what we're going to do, and we're right on time here. That's pretty awesome. She's tapping her watch. I know she's got me going here. And so look, here we go. I think that 45 minutes per session. And I will kind of wander around a little bit. I'm going to start with grade configuration and school size, but I'm going to wander around a little bit too to hear this discussion. We've got flip charts that people are going to record. Your goal is to do this, is at the end of 45 minutes, formulate a question, 2 questions, 3 questions. I don't care how many questions you formulate, that really get to the heart of where you want to be in each of these subject areas. That really, and thinking that we're going to go out in a month and we're going to talk to hundreds of people and get their input on these topic areas that are going to be the foundation of how we start facility planning. I haven't even talked about condition yet. I haven't even talked about utilization yet, because none of that matters unless we establish this first. And that's why we start here. So this is as important a meeting as you're going to have throughout the entire process. We come back to the next ad hoc committee meeting. We're going to get in depth on these, really narrow them down to be the final questionnaire to go out to the community. And we're going to talk about how we facilitate that. The other piece that I want to leave you with this before you break in your groups, is that if you think that there is an important piece of data that needs to be shown at the community meeting in relation to that, mark that on the flip chart. Because for my presentation, it's important that I present the right data to get there. And so if you think that, that's going to be a good piece of data, make sure it's in there for the presentation. Mark that on your sheet for us, okay? So here we go. We're going to be about 2 minutes of reshuffling here. So you might want to grab your stuff. And here, I'm going to restate it here. I've got student services here, ESL pre-K, gifted, and special education. Hold on. I've got core and space types right up here up front. These 3 tables right here up front. I've got grade configuration and school size back in those back 2 tables. I've got athletics in the center right here, and I've got student services all the way in the back 2 tables. All right, Mark, get set, go.
As you are wrapping up, we're going to bring Tracy Richter back up to give us our instructions on the report out.
Okay, so we've got, there you go. So we've got about 25 minutes to do a report out, and here's how we want to do it. I know we're all trying to settle back in. So we kept notes in kind of a running tablet of theme in this grades and grade configuration school size. So what I'd like to have is and it can be either an ad hoc committee member if you want to, and one of the subject area experts to come up and just give the general overview. You're going to have about 5 minutes per breakdown. Keep in mind, this is what we're going to do with these. We're going to take these back, and there's some questions in here, but there's a lot of ideas. And so what we're going to try to formulate some questions behind that to get those back to you to work on for the next committee meeting. And so if we want to start, you guys want to start over here? So what I want you to do is you got to come up here because that's the only way anybody's going to hear you. I'll hold your flip charts if you want, but I just want you to follow kind of the themes that you saw and the direction of questions that we want to ask. Come on. And I'll help. Hold.
I hope we are reflective of all the teams. I'm Kathy Leffler, the Executive Director of Special Ed and Student Support Services, and this is LaShawn.
LaShawn Carter with Future Ready Columbus.
So we had such deep discussions. We were sort of all over the place, and so we hope you were too. Some of the things we talked about is, what would you like, could you turn it just a little bit for me? What would you like in pre-K? Who do we service pre-K through grades 12? Who do we consider, the biggest question is, who do we consider the learners we serve in our schools? And then we sort of talked about what do our schools look like, and including all sorts of community resources. We can't do this alone, and what does that look like, and including all stakeholders in the city. So I kind of hopped, would you like more access to pre-K, special ed, ESL, gifted services, if your student can remain in the same feeder pattern. So we talked about special services that are needed to be maybe more in one spot because it's so specialized versus offering services, small pieces of services throughout the city, and what's feasible and what's not feasible. What is the minimum time you would like to have your child on a bus? So we sort of talked about busing, and can you look at busing on a different way since we service kids all over the city of Columbus? And we want to still continue to offer that openness, variety of services, but what does that mean in transportation? And so does it mean that maybe we would have staggered start and end times? Does it mean we would have students centralized in one part of the city? So kind of looking, would we have Wi-Fi on our buses? Would we have different assistance on our buses so that, because we don't want to limit our offering by saying, oh, all students will only be on the bus for 30 minutes when that might not be possible, but what could students do on the bus to make that a great time on the bus? Let's see, are we on the next page? Our paper holders kind of, did I miss anything, LaShawn?
No, I think you're doing good.
Okay. Let me see. Then talking about services accessible within the neighborhood and definitely looking at ADA. Are our buildings, old or new, are they accessible to every single community member? And even as we go forward and build new buildings to ensure that our older buildings can accommodate anybody that wants to enter our buildings, and that we keep them in good working shape so that we're constantly checking, are our doors opening, are our ramps okay? We talked a lot about differentiation and class size, looking at the resources that we have, the money that we have, and balancing that against what's a perfect class size. And we talked about how can we create inclusive models within Columbus City Schools and within with our partnerships all throughout the city, so that maybe if you're looking at to be economically, responsible, it would be a 29-to-1 ratio, but then we would look at every stakeholder, every person in those buildings, so that kids could be, it's inclusive throughout. We build communities within our schools. And we also, how can we open schools up so that they meet the needs of each community? Can we have food pantries in our schools? Can we have clothing closets in our school? Can we have partnerships with Job and Family Services so we're offering classes to our parents? How can all of that happen? So we stayed within our exceptionalities, but we also went all over the place in our group. So we probably covered some of yours. And then we talked about, lastly, the flexibility of spaces. So, LaShawn, did I miss anything?
No, I think you did a great job.
Okay, that's it for our group. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.
All right.
Wait, LaShawn's got to say something.
No. Ditto.
So my name is Cheryl Ward, and I'm the Director of Student and Family Engagement with Columbus City Schools.
I'm Christina McMenamy. I'm a parent representing the West Side.
So we had a robust conversation. A lot of it centered around how do we support the need for school social workers, nurses, and counselors in every building? How do we take a look at resource centers in buildings themselves that have wraparound services that deal with whether it is mental health, whether it's health services, that is in the neighborhood, accessible to families, to students to be able to get the necessary care. And if that is not available, how do we have centralized places that people have access in order to get those kind of services? We also talked about how do we teach social emotional learning, dealing with the poverty challenge. How do we deal with supports that help keep children in school and provide those wraparound services to families who may be struggling? How do we do innovative programs. So how do we do after-school programs? What does that look like? How do we have our schools to be places where there are extended times? So there's not just traditional hours, and how do we utilize some of those opportunities for parents and staff to be able to utilize our buildings? How do we help our community providers understand what we need as a district? We have a lot of community providers, and a couple of things that came up was community providers asking the district, what is it that you need? Versus here's what we got, and how does it fit into your existing organization? There was a comment about increasing school counselors at the high school level as a way of increasing college enrollment and really working on that, as well as closing the gap at the elementary levels. Continued conversation, a lot of themes around school nurse, school counselors, and social workers actually having separate rooms to be able to have confidential conversations and be able to do the task at hand. Parents seeking out other services. How do we engage parents? How do our buildings make sure that we are welcoming to parents so that parents feel welcome to be able to ask questions or to seek services from our buildings? Go. How does the district help parents feel welcome? How do we create better relationships? How do we continue to create partnerships and relationships? How do we leverage corporate relationships and the ability to be able to utilize corporate dollars or to be able to have corporate resources or in-kind services brought into our district? You are adding? That's it. I think.
That's like,
we had a lot of pages.
you do.
So
Not enough fingers.
I was trying to
Well,
summarize that.
I've always
for
thought
you.
for you guys, this city has a great hospital network, and my goodness, taking advantage of those kind of things or in the corporate partner world
Yes.
are awesome ideas. So.
Yep. All right.
Love those. Thank you. Let's go to space tech since you're right here. Athletics, you're up next. Just be on cue.
My name's Peggy Cleary, and I'm the Executive Director of Career Tech, but I have a parent that wants to present, and it's Tiffany
Grinstead.
Grinstead.
Okay, so we have two flip charts. This one, I wasn't actually in the conversation as much, so you're going to have to jump in.
Can we
if
flip
we,
it so she
okay,
can
I'll start here, and then I'll let you do that one. So one of the things we talked about space, and I guess you would say the theme is flexibility of space and the different ways that we can have space change according to our needs. So we also talked about where we can keep space together and where we can keep space apart. So things like having our computer labs in our libraries so that they can be separate, so both spaces work can actually occur. In a lot of our schools today, they're shoved together and one supersedes the other. We talked about integrating technology into all of our spaces. A lot of our kids do not have internets or computers or those kinds of accesses at home, and it's integral to our learning experiences. So how do we integrate it into our spaces? What might it look like if kids all were given computers or iPads, at least while they're at school, and that was integrated into this space? We talked about maker spaces, which are these spaces that particularly can be used at many levels, but they're a trend at the middle school level where you go in and you're building and connecting, whether that's robotics or that's construction or even art, that it's a very interactive space for kids where they can create and be tactile. So we talked about that. We talked about flexibility. New Albany apparently has built a new school that's very flexible, so garage doors come down to create a classroom. They can come up to create a space where lots of people can be in a space together. And apparently there's flexible furniture, there's flexible configurations, there's cafe spaces. We talked about the flexibility in high schools for kids to have space that's their own, with comfortable chairs where they can go to have a discussion, to calm down, to reconnect. We talked about designated spaces for the arts, the importance of presentation spaces, and we talked a lot about bringing the community into our schools. So auditoriums, we know they're not covered by the dollars, but they can be a really important space in a school, and at least for middle schools and high schools, many of us thought that they were pretty necessary. We talked about how can we bring the programming that's in some of our special schools into all of our neighborhood schools, and how can our space serve that? We talked about Wi-Fi. We talked about simulated workspaces, and I got to learn, I don't know if y'all know this, but we have like a nursing school and restaurant and what all else? A lot, right? So I'm gonna be checking that out. Cosmetology, I'm gonna get my hair cut and everything. But you know, really thinking about space for those kinds of programs and how the community connects into them. Oh, and we talked about parents. And how you welcome and connect parents into the space. Sometimes a school can communicate, you don't belong here. And it's really, really important that the school have space for parents and think about how they're gonna interact. Community volunteers, tutors, big brothers, big sisters, mentors. How is this space gonna connect and serve those connection points? And so we talked quite a lot about that. Did I miss anything really important? Okay, so that's what we talked about in the second group. I don't know if you want to.
Sure. I think we hit most of it. Career Tech courses offered at the home high school was important to some, as well as earlier at middle school, bringing some of that back. Large classrooms was a big area of conversations. If we're going to have 25 students in a room, build it for 35 so that there's move around. Bathrooms were a big discussion. Bathrooms in all pre-K and even kindergarten, and then even larger bathrooms in some of the schools. That was a big conversation piece. Lighting, natural, dimmers, green spaces, teacher collaboration spaces, that was important for the parents because they felt the teachers could come back refreshed. Spaces that were accessible for all, use data to make our decisions, outdoor learning spaces, courtyards, and I think a lot about delivering education differently, looking at community spaces from early to later in the evening, and I think that's really it. Thanks.
I don't really like to use the first 21st century school. I think it's overused. But how the design manual embraces today and tomorrow's learning. And the state has done a good job of embracing that has to happen in buildings. And so I encourage you, if you get a chance, to go onto the OSFC website and look at the design manual introduction pieces, because they embrace a lot of what you talk about. We can get them funded, we can do them the right way. So that's good news. Yep. Okay, we're on to athletics.
Certainly. And I have two parents, community members, that would also like to share their thoughts here this evening with us.
Hi, I'm Estrella Jacobson, representing Northwest Communities, but really representing all of the students in Columbus City Schools. I was with the athletics group. We had a very good, very interesting conversation. It looked like both of the groups spoke about a lot of the same speaking points that we are concerned as parents. We talked about how athletics is the connection for the students in the community, their families. Athletics is a community issue. It's something that we can come together as a community to help fix some of our local schools, but that only goes so far. When we talk about tracks and basketball floors that need to get redone, we are very fortunate to have some of our communities have strong, PTA and parents that can fundraise some of that money, but that money only goes so far in our communities that we need the district support after that. We talked about how can we get the whole community to support our schools, including we talked about just not people with kids in the school, not just parents. We're talking about single people. We talked about people that are retired. How can we present it to them in a way that it becomes part of their community and part of that life of that section. We talked about how athletics is important at looking at the whole child. We talked about educational athletics and what that means and giving those students an opportunity Especially, we talked about how some of the club sports, a lot of our kids are going into club sports instead of the school community sports, and how we can turn that around by providing better facilities for them to play in. We also talked a little bit about facility standards. What does that mean in Columbus City schools? What are our facility standards? We've got some schools that have beautiful facilities, beautiful tracks, and we have some of our schools that you can't even run on the track. They're in a deplorable condition. How can we make our monies spread the wealth across to all of our communities? Because all of our communities do matter. We all want that funding, of course, for our schools, but we want it for all of our kids. We talked about great to have $1 million facilities, but as parents, not necessarily what we're looking for. We are looking to make sure our facilities are safe and in good repair and can be used by our student athletes.
We talked about as it relates to the facilities, because a lot of the facilities are in really bad shape. So the facilities would definitely need to be repaired, and then maintenance moving forward so that the condition of those facilities are not in the condition that they are right now. We talked about how families make educational choices based upon the athletic program. A lot of parents, decide what schools that their children go to based upon the athletic programs. We talked about how we can engage our Columbus City School alumni a little bit more to help improve the programs. I came out of West High School in '97, so I came out with Michael Redd, who plays for the Milwaukee Bucks, Kevin Keynes. There's been amazing athletes that have come out of Columbus City Schools. How can we engage those alumni to help improve the programs? We talked about also, let's see, and as a pretty much a more of a broader thing that could probably touch to all of the groups that were here, better financial transparency on how those dollars are spent, not just for the athletic department, but across the board. And I think everybody could speak to that, a better transparency to the community as it relates to how the dollars are spent. And I think that's it.
Thank you.
Before we transition, we have a member from our Group 1 that wants to come up and also share a couple of quick thoughts.
Come on.
Yes,
Absolutely,
please.
Certainly.
Every voice is important. Please go right ahead.
I'm sorry. You put it down.
Which one do you want to
My name is Alita Augustine, and it was just something that was really important that I thought that we talked about in the first group, that some of the students self-eliminate due to some of the sport costs. Because they're expensive, their families can't afford $500 to be on the cheerleading squad or to buy extra shirts. And some of the students have even had problems graduating because they can't afford the money that they were supposed to pay before. So we talked about trying to make that in a community partnership to get the community to help provide those dollars so that every kid that is eligible can play and not be eliminated. And I just wanted to say that because I thought that was really important. And Mr. Dillard kept on telling us how athletics is our community connection. He's not listening, he's on his phone, but that's okay.
Thank you very much.
Anybody from school size? And I wrote them down. I could do it, but people don't want to hear me. Alex, you provide a lot of good information here. You don't have a community first? Bring some. There you go. All right. So this is from the first group, and that's from the second group. So I am Alex Trevino, Director of Capital Improvements for the district.
I'm Dewan Hood, Director of Buildings and Grounds for the district.
And so the issues we talked about are serving our transient populations, both in terms of how do you kind of plan where those students are going to be, and knowing that our mobility rate is awfully high in the district, just kind of how you manage that. Just talking about the student-teacher ratio that we kind of plan for, that 25 to 1,
And is that a flexible number? And how do we plan the facilities to accommodate for that? We talked about age differences in the grade groupings and what are appropriate transitions, and should we look at different grade bands to help ease those transitions. We talked about looking specifically at attention to child development, and that really kind of ties in with the last one of looking at that grade banding and whether there are different ways to handle grade bandings than we do currently that might assist with that. And it kind of just keeps on going in that same band. So talking about reduction in the number of transitions, we also talked about whether it would make sense to reduce the number of grade configurations that the district operates, which at least anecdotally we think might make it easier for folks to transition between buildings when they need to. There was discussion about how to look at our schools so that they're less competitive with each other in terms of kind of poaching students and more collaborative. We talked about redistricting. We know we have issues where we have new buildings that are not at their desired capacity, and we have buildings that are over capacity, and whether we need to take a hard look at redistricting to accommodate for those changes in demographics across the city. And then we talked about providing special programming for K through 12. So right now our specialized programming tends to focus at the middle school and higher grades, and how we can kind of provide that continuum of choices from cradle through career. We talked about making buildings so that they were flexible, so that they could accommodate different grade bands. So even if we built it, for example, as a K-5 building, and if it needed to, it could become a K-3 or a K-6. We talked about whether there are opportunities to operate more campuses, and so that could mean multiple buildings on one site. That could be single buildings on one site that serve multiple kind of programs individually. We talked about the financial realities of how we accomplish a building plan and the economies of scale that we should at least consider in terms of what that building plan looks like. We talked about transportation and the amount of time that students spend on buses. Obviously, anything we do to reduce the number of facilities is likely to increase the number of students who are on buses, maybe not absolutely, but likely. Oh, I'm sorry, I'm struggling with the first word. We're regionalizing the system. So I think somebody else touched on that today, but whether we look at providing more but smaller regionalized services across the district where we're providing comparable alternative lottery choices at the various quadrants of the city.
Okay, that was the first group.
You want to take one, Dawn?
So we talked about geographic influence on size, staffing considerations, service offerings, and how our, what is that?
Sorry, my writing.
The B word.
Well, how are we bringing services, or how are we balancing services with funding? So if a smaller school, because it doesn't have enough dollars coming in the door, but needs full-time media or full-time nurse or full-time, so how do you balance small school with funding that comes in the door and consider that? Was one.
Talked about school size in accordance with the number of students served, half populated, overutilized, the size of schools to finance, transportation costs, drive times, and labor costs.
A lot of the same themes were coming out.
There was grade configurations, demographic influences, building transitions, what is the PK?
So, pre-K included in grade configuration discussion.
And
link to you guys, this group over here.
Number of grade configurations and legacies, and do we limit numbers?
So there's, both the groups discussed about that, and maybe the difficulty of the grade configuration is legacy. Nothing more than, it's always been a K8 or a K6, so it always has to be. And that's not the way this district looks. We look forward and say, if it is the best, we use it. If we can figure out if it's better, let's do that. And so it all fit into the grade configuration, school size, about that flexibility to be able to do both in there. So, okay, that was really good.
Thank you.
8:30. So we're at 8:30, and so here's what the plan is. So by the next meeting, what we're going to do is we're going to transition back to form questions around all these ideas So for the next community meeting, we want to shape a questionnaire that really gets to the heart of the questions we want to ask. We're also going to be updating information in that background report, so be looking for that. We're going to work toward building condition numbers for you. We're going to work toward capacity for you, because those are going to be critical numbers in our next discussions as we move forward. Again, to close out, the name tags, if you put questions on them, leave your name tags. We'll just make kind of a center table right here in front of us, so leave that name tag, or your tent, I'm sorry. If you have any questions in there that we can put on the frequently asked questions page that we want to continue to do. And again, we thank you for your time. 8:30, we said we go, and we're 8:30, so thanks so much again. Have a great night.